I'm gonna say this now. I'm nervous because I've read all y'all poems. All right, I'm just gonna put that out there.
Same here. So
I'm just gonna
we're in
be
the same
real,
boat.
real honest.
I mean, true that mood. So we're in the same boat together.
Yep, we are.
I was
I
so
was
excited to hear you all.
I'm excited for the conversation too, like afterwards. I got some questions, but yeah.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, non-binary folks and the like. My name is I.S. Jones, director of the Watershed reading series with Art Lit Lab, and it is my immense pleasure to introduce to you our four readers for the evening. Ayokunle Falomo, Brittany Rogers, Nichols, and Lauren Russell. Please stay at the end for a Q&A with our readers. Ayokunle Falomo is Nigerian American and author of the chapbook African American with New Delta Review and two self-published collections. A recipient of fellowships from the Vermont Studio Center in McDowell, his work has been featured in on Right About Now, the New York Times, Houston Public Media, Michigan Quarterly Review, the Texas Review, New England Review, and elsewhere. He's out here, y'all. Get into him. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology from the University of Houston, a specialist in school psychology degree from Sam Houston State University, and is currently has an MFA in poetry at the University of Michigan Helen Zell Writers. Please give it up for Ayo Kunle.
Thank you so much for having me. Without wasting time, I'll get into it. I'll start with a poem. I'll read maybe two poems, one very short and one long. If there is enough time, I'll do maybe one more poem. But the first poem I'll start with, and I'll start my time now, is a poem that I revisited and edited like this past week as we were kind of experiencing the winter storm in Houston. But I can't write about it just because it's still very fresh. And so I was thinking about Hurricane Harvey, and so editing this poem. So it's called Thinking of Hurricane Harvey During a Winter Storm in Houston, years later. Rafts, jet skis, canoes, cats in cages, dogs in kennels, an owl seeking refuge inside a man's car, shivering, its eyes as if afraid, though who can say really what it feels sitting there next to him. A woman says, pray. That's all we can do. Another asks, what's prayer gonna do? I am tempted to pray for more floods, each one a plier to pry my hands open like a box of rusty locks. See that? The child in a yellow raincoat and pink rain boots wading through the rivered street, a colony of fire ants floating on top of the water. And this poem is very long, so bear with me. I hope your stamina is rewarded. Uh, it is a poem that I kind of imagined, you know, more and more lately, it feels like we're approaching the end of the world, like for real, for real. I mean, the world has been ending forever. For some people, it never even started, but you know this. Uh, but I imagined, you know, the last night of the end of the world, being with somebody you love, and knowing that that's the last night you get to spend with them. It's called The Night Before the Last Obard. The end of the world is as close as it has always been. Another is on its way. Joshua Bennett. Every poem is an obard, my love. All spring we frolicked, your chest a nest for my head to rest on. And now the sidewalk buried in snow, the bright red, yellow, and blue of the neighbor's flower bush, all gone. It's fall again. I know you already have a name. Don't ask who made me the Adam of the Anthropocene. But shall I call you Eve, my love? Tonight, before dawn arrives, let us remember our final night in the garden, how we disrobed shame of shame and gave her a new name. Glorious, how we stood, unadorned except in a dark coat of our flesh. You knelt before me. I leveled to my cock and I did not think myself a god. What we saw of us, we saw through the lens of God, and it was good. We left, we had to, but it was by our own accord. If we return, there'll be awaiting us the owl in the corner, the crow on the line above, the jasmine bush covering a cotton gin. Oh, won't I become a garden for you? Plant first on my left cheek a kiss, then on my right, my nose, forehead, and mouth. If I must leave, let me leave with a body stained in the red of your lip stain. Broken man that I am, to you give I wholly my porcelain body. I trusted in your hands, which wrinkled by the years will be shakier than I remember them. If time allows it, we will one day be old and gray. Thank God for the app that lets us imagine what we might look like then. The morning wet with what remains of the rain from the night before will drive my love down the highway of our lives, far into the distance. The pipes from the factories will look like logs, and from each, like from your grandfather's mouth when he was yet alive, smoke the color of the cloud above them. Remember me then, will you? My love, after I have gone, the dawn breaking in, the light on the mosaic stained glass window of our lives white as the inside of the young coconut we shared, the day I first touched my hands to your face. Remember me, will you? By the unsaintly scent I'll leave behind, the dust that is the dried sweat from my body, my love. I'll miss the glory and the syntax of our sex. Here in this church of slow release, this church of the rise and fall of breath, this church of give and take, the weight of our bodies thrashing against the threshing floor of the bed. In this cathedral of bones and flesh, what, my love, shall we not make of God, of love? The body, is it not bread for the beloved? Honey, in every spoonful of you, one eon of shared breath. Oh, the reckless ruckus of our riotous art still beating inside their cages. How divine, that which defies divination. What makes you run your fingers through the thick forest of my beard? Praise it, that they are not caught in the roots of it. My body soaked by your hands. You touch every inch of me and I am alive. You slather my body with the butter from a tree. What is it? This tenderness, this ferromagnetic foolishness that makes me trust my heart in your hands the way the newborn now crocodile sleeps, rid of the worry of death inside her mother's jaws. Yes, I worry for the child in me as I do the barnacle geese's descent. Yes, I worry about the child in me. Yes, I remember the morning we walked to the beach. Lord, my eyes, how they miss see or miss what they should see. As when Magritte saw coffins, where Manet saw pale figures, I saw instead of a bird a dirty diaper. When Magritte saw the song of love, he cried, not on account of sadness, no. It had something to do with gratitude, I think. What gift it is to see and be seen. In my left hand, I held a banana peel I wanted to throw away, but you would not let me. I'll carry it if you won't, you said. Back home, the container you have for everything that is rotting or that will soon rot. I did not let you. I carried it. Like a man, I carried my own trash. That's a joke. When will I receive my pat on the butt for that? Forgive me the theatrics of my rhetoric, but how could I have let you, knowing the weight Black women have carried and have to carry still? I'm still joking. I have no need for answers. Soon I'll be dead. And then what will I have to say of the toponymy of love? To ask, what is the name to give the place we place our faith, our fears, and uncertainties about the future? There is no poetic way to say it. We're fucked. It's crude, I know, and so let's fuck all night long while we wait for the world to end. Forgive me, my love. I know you do not like it when I say fuck, when instead I mean the music we make of our welded bodies. The forests are melting, the ice caps are burning or something, but dance with me before I go to a song not yet composed. My tongue a snake inside the cave of your mouth. Let me slither if I must into a world where I shed my skin and become yours again and again. I'll return for you, to you, my love, remember me, though the wind will blow away what's left of me. Wait for me, will you, by the bank of an unnamed stream. Forget me not, though the water will wash away the dust of me. Forget me not in the gentle heat of the morning sun. Forget me not in the blooming arrival of spring, and stay, will you, till summer creeps in. Forget me not in the meadow of the new world. Forget me not in the woods. Forget me not the way a flower does not forget, yet springs up from a field where once bloodthirsty men fought themselves to death. Let us remember love in a year of riots, by which I mean any and every year, when lying with you on the asphalt, which under us became a meadow, our bodies on the line, all for the sake of love. I kiss your busted lips, and in the face of what desired to kill us, we loved as loud as a bullhorn, loud as a bullfrog in heat. And when we sweated, neither bullets nor blood, my love. Remember Noah, who as the world he knew drew close to its end, warned of its end. And also the deer who kept playing their horns, the elephants their trumpets, as he invited each animal to abandon the certainty of home. Some nights, unable to sleep, I've wondered if he heard, and if yes, how he dared to bear the music of their sorrow. My love, I'll miss most the trees who I'm told have their own songs and cry in times of drought. How sad and boring poems will be when, no, I will not say it. Oh, hope, feathered as the poet thought it to be, always in conversation with the wind. My love, I watched a woman rescue a koala once. I wouldn't have cared if it did not cry the way a child in pain might. It was then I imagined, in a past not yet arrived, a child, ours, pressing her face and tiny hands to the glass enclosure inside the museum of our wreckage. A child who wonders, what, if anything, did they know of joy? Oh child, if I can leave you anything, know that we knew the sharp hook of it, as well as what we fished out the water and left to dangle on the line too. We knew the troubled waters, oh, we knew the kindnesses of strangers who let us pet their dogs. We played upscotch with fear, and we were launched into the sky. We watched it light up, and with great force descended, yet did not touch the ground. How close we were to the edge of the last breath, and how we came up for air, alive, again and again and again. Oh, we knew. We knew as well to say a prayer or two, although there came a time we could not remember the words. The poets tried and failed to remind us. One wrote, "Dear Lord, what art now is left to make of the earth? Daily bread in me is the temptation to say, before I become undone, I will be done soon with earth as I am with heaven. Father, my braided tress passes for a snake in the dark, as it was in the beginning. The end of the world is beginning, as the world without beginning is now beginning and ever shall be in the end," and so forth. Though I long resisted it, I finally became, say it, a translator for the Department of Grief. The lawn outside overgrown with weeds. The secretary is always high. The phone lines never work. Soon, every surface that could be a mirror mirror will be blackened by soot, such that we'll no longer see our own reflections. But doesn't it end the world each night we fall asleep? Quietly, not by fire or flood. And so I predict the world has ended, as it did in 365, in 1524, in 1666, in 1985, in 1996, in 1999, in 2000, in 2011, in 2012, last night, and it will end again. I'll turn the lights off now to fall asleep. You ask if you can play the rain. To fall asleep, I imitate the in and out of your breath and meditate on the sound of the rain. Oh, my dead, so long, till we meet for the earth's return to it. I'm ready, Lord. The world can end now. Good night, my golden toad. Good night, my burrowing boa. Good night, my alchem blue butterfly. Good night, my black-faced honey creeper. Good night, my Carolina parakeet. Good night, my pig-footed bandicoot. Good night, my love, my loved. Thank you. And I'll end with one more poem that is called Prayer. Dear unwashed plates inside the sink. Dear sputtering faucet. Dear cold linoleum. Dear warblers outside my window. Dear snow. Dear clumps of hair stuck inside the drain. Dear almost empty shea butter container. Dear rain. Dear cum stain on the sheets. Dear empty bottle of spiced rum. Dear bowl of leftover beans, oh dear. Dear compostable takeaway plate. Dear books scattered on the bed and on the floor. Dear iPhone charger. Dear morning breath. Dear blue flame underneath the pot of oatmeal. Dear God, dear God, dear God. Thank you all so much.
Whew. Give it up from the comforts of your seats, Pastor Ayokunle. That was sermon. That was gorgeous. Thank you so much. Brittany Rogers is a poet that I admire, a poet I've had the immense pleasure of working alongside, a poet who is already a very powerful poet and is continuing to grow in her strength. And she does a beautiful thing with her work where she highlights voices that don't get enough praise, and they live in the center of all her work. She is a poet, a mother, an educator, and native Detroiter. She has work published in Vinyl Poetry and Prose, The Offing, Tinderbox Poetry, and the Breakbeat Poets Black Girl Magic Anthology. Brittany is a fellow at Vona Voices, the Watering Hole Poetry Incubator, and the Pink Door Writing Retreat. She's also a co-editor-in-chief at Muzzle Magazine. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you all Brittany Rogers.
Thank you. Hey, y'all. All right, let's hop right on into it. Thank you so much, Etiola. I'm gonna begin this set like most sets began for me with my grandmother. Elegy on Forgetting. A penicillin shot took my grandmother's memory. She's always been allergic to needles. At random, she recites old addresses, gives me enough quarters to play 3661 when she dreams of Beaconsfield, 1832 when her heart tucks her back through the cemetery across the street. I don't visit like I should. These kids, that school, this man, self-care, the 20-minute drive across 94. Granny asks why it takes so long, though we both know the East Side don't do shortcuts. She swoons like a child in awe when I call. Yes, girl, the Lord put you on my heart and here you are. On days when the penicillin is a pair of dice rattling through her brain, she calls me by my mama's name. Kat, you remember when? Back before your daddy died, when we was on LICAS. 3 years now since my mama up and moved to Alabama. I'm not sure which one of us my granny believes. she is talking to when she asks, when you gonna see about your old girl? Come bring your tail on home. Old dude at the gas station says he's never seen a Black girl with blonde hair before. He a lie. No child born in the 90s missed Lil' Kim and Crush on You. A vision. Queen Bee undressed in a bra, all see-through. I watched her enthralled. Wanted my hair blunt cut, coiffed, monochromatic. Wanted to be gazed at like a bouquet of calla lilies. My skin petal soft and left it after, dark and mocked as it's been. How strange this pretense of unseeing. Blonde on light skin, a sunflower on me, it peels like acid. The audacity of demand, to pretend his compliment a reward, his gaze a necessity when I don't need acknowledgement, when I've been full of myself. Session 60, medical trauma. I can admit it. I was a fast-tailed girl woman, a preening sunflower, wild-mouthed and ready. I requested birth control, not expecting the clean, cold speculum, a metal beak pecking between my thighs. The Black OB mocks when I flinch, says the steel is a small pinch compared to some boy all up in you. Years later, a blood-stuffed cyst erupts, months old, years. Fibroids run through the woman in my family, but I'm new to the small hurt of the doctor's iron hand pressed into me. I wasn't ready for him to argue. You aren't crying, it can't hurt that bad. When I blacked out, nor a river of opiates that did nothing for the pain but knocked me out cold. I miscarried once, then twice, and was treated as if I had a cold. Told to try again when I was done crying about it. That could take years at this rate. The womb is the safest place I know unless you Black, in which case no place is safe enough. What woman with kids, dead or alive, doesn't have urns ready to pour out like liquor? My children are a small mercy. I am dark and not small, each appointment an experiment. At the last one, the cold nurse put 2 IVs in the same arm since I'm so heavy. There, I ready my back for a botched epidural. I've grown used to yearly misdiagnoses. I admit, I am a prideful woman. I don't cry in the office when the anti-Black doctor prescribed me pills for the wrong disorder. The Blackest thing about me is how unsurprised I am. My hope, a small grain of salt. Each day, the news offers a new woman as proof. A nurse reports ovaries stolen in cold blood. The woman crushed and unconsenting. Years ago, Mississippi saw the horror of girl women not ready to become pincushions, not ready for organs to be scooped like cream. What won't they take from a Black body in surgery? On accident? How many years before they steal something I can't replace? My small rebellion. When I'm sick these days, be it panic attack or cold, I stay home. Unwise perhaps, but a living woman. A couple more poems and then I would be out of your hair. I'll read a longer one since we're on the subject of medical racism and childbirth. Always fun. It is not logical to want another child. Both times folks swore I was all belly. I don't remember when I stopped seeing my painted toenails, when my face first became a moon. They kept insisting that eating for 2 is just a myth. I gained 80 pounds the first time, 60 pounds the second. Doctors predicted gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, sleep apnea. The baby pecking at my sciatic nerve was of course weight related. This would not be happening if I exercised restraint. Both my children were overdue. The first time Hutzel's doctor saw switch thin braids, a bus pass, my Medicaid card, figured a first-time mother, Black and drowning, wouldn't know labor knocking her knees together like an abandoned house mid-demolition. My daughter stopped kicking. They prescribed a double dose of Pitocin to shut me up. The second baby coming late meant I couldn't attend my 10-year reunion. Danielle couldn't either. We both expected recovery that weekend. Instead, she was miles away in a Chicago hospital, lupus gnawing at her hands, back, legs, while postpartum eyed my gut, breast, tear ducts like a meal. Dr. Mims tried everything, stripping my membranes, making me walk, sounded like all my aunties. That baby ain't gonna make it another month. She scheduled an induction when we passed week 40. I was to walk in first thing Monday, but my water broke Friday morning. Everything out of place. The first morning of my maternity leave, my daughter cooked frozen waffles topped with dollar store candy. 3 weeks later, I was holding her brother's wobbly neck in place, nudging his cheeks to open and nurse. When he is learning to scoot across our stained carpet, she is being kissed by her crush in first grade. Now she makes grits and scrambled eggs with no shells in the runny mist. Ask about oral sex and baby making and only looks a little shamed. My son feels alone about me when I leave for work. They turn my lap to an altar, petitioning God in my honorary heart for a baby sister. My mother jokes that she has a belly for each of us. A C-section smile lives at the base of them all, thin-lipped reminder that she came out a notch on the surgeon's belt. Granny claims to not remember how old she was when her mother died in childbirth, only that she was the first of 6, only that she took care of children while she was yet one, takes care of her own while they are yet adults. Says mothering don't stop till you dead, and even then. I ask about her favorite part of childhood. She spits back, childhood. What's that? I miss Danielle most in the summer. The last one was spent on the phone all night like high school kids, before children, before we could pronounce autoimmune. She called whenever the nurses disturbed her sleep. I answered, holding a newborn to my breast. Illness is relearning a life with a self you do not recognize. My prayers from my old selves bouncing around the walls unanswered. We agree. It feels like I've always been a mommy, like she has been taunting lupus for as long as either of us can remember. Reunion weekend, we watch our classmates searching bottles, new arms, old yearbooks for an identity clear as rain. Sick as we are, we know our mama's names. I tell her again how this one came too fast for an epidural. Stubborn like his mama. Promise Danielle she won't miss another birth. She planned to come home soon. She couldn't wait to see what he looked like in person, when his features looked less like us, more like his own face. In 3 months, she was an ancestor. Postpartum pulled me into its lap, let me rest there until I forgot my name. I love y'all. Nichols, you make my heart smile. I'm gonna do 2 more shorter ones and then I am officially out of your hair. One dedicated to Detroit, as everything that I write has ever been and likely will ever be. And then the last one, because it's my favorite poem to read right now, just because it's fun. Like Cast and Werner responds to the Chrysler plant being built. Summer has arrived and there are no children to shriek in their front yards, to chase behind the ice cream truck, careful to avoid the cracks littered across this sidewalk. Our corner store is gone. Our apartment buildings gone. The small brick homes lining Lycast like a picket fence, all gone. The only view from here is what folks will migrate across state lines for. They all know the plants pay well, clear the college debt, earn the family a home on the good side of town, where the houses have not yet been demolished, the sky unsmogged with factory air. Wouldn't be no good side if we hadn't been here. Our land widespread, so ripe y'all paid good money to pull us out by the roots. Every Monday, folks swarm your doors like yellow jackets, dressed in their Sunday best, hoping for hiring papers. To work machinery into their hands are brick rough, their backs hunched over for years post-retirement. There is no movement on the block these days, only the screech of machinery, the grinding of hot metal. Still, no one driving by can say the perks ain't plentiful. The Chrysler employees don't clock out looking pleased with their honest day's work. And then lastly, money. After watching the video by Cardi B, after Bitch Better Have My Money by Tiana Clark. I too want to walk in the bank brazen, to rain dollars over my friends' asses, fund any pleasure we want. I want enough money for men to cover their eyes when I walk in the room, enough that no one reaches for my waist without asking in the middle of me daring to admire myself. I want to perch straight backed and haughty, pat my pussy, shoulder roll. Damn, I'm fine. I was born to flex. It's not really about the money. It's about who I could have been had my family kept the land we owned before the factory buyout, before we stopped scraping change together to keep the farm I never got to step foot on. I don't want to be rich. I want enough coin to relax, to spoil my damn self, to tend to the baby gasping and rooting for milk without worrying about ruining my good dress. Thank y'all.
I'm so happy you read that poem. It's one of my favorite poems of yours. Everyone give it up again for Brittany Rogers. Woo! Okay. Whew. What a good night. What can I say about Nichols? He constantly gives me new language for love, new language for hope, new language for a better future where Black people can be safe and happy and free. And yeah, he's just one of the best of us. If I say too much, I'm gonna start crying, and I got to do my job. Nichols is a Brooklyn-born and raised poet. They are an intersectional nerd and obsessed with talking, thinking, and writing about all things creative and human. It is my immense honor to introduce to you all Nichols.
Hey y'all, can you hear me? We good? Perfect. Yeah, thank y'all so much. Thank you to my fellow readers. Thank you to Artlit Lab. Thank you for Atila. I'm not gonna say too much because I'm gonna cry and you gonna cry. It's gonna be a real big thing. And we don't really need everybody in our business like that. But you my homie. Love you. No, but for real. I am nervous. I had to smoke my little lavender chamomile cigarette at the beginning because these poets mean a lot to me. I'm gonna start off reading Untitled Poem. I liked to read this around people I love. Oh, poets, you feed me. I open my home to poets, rebelling against the past, stream of consciousness, smoke two spliffs like nothing, where the liquor at, peeking as poets. Let me tell you about your syntax talking thick stanza, oh, writing as poets. Let me tell you about this enjambment. Watch me balance a sedan and my drama. Can we bring back the romantics? This motherfucker don't know shit about shit. Who said they could write? Kiki in the back ass poets talking about why their line breaks on shuffle. Yes, I'm talking about ass, hood ass, real ass poets. I'm talking about critique on my grandma, one Mogan ass poets, where the brown liquor ass poets, nuck if you buck ass poets, popping this pussy on a handstand ass poets, oh black ass poets, oh brown ass poets, oh queer ass poets. I want to see you happy. I want to see you fed. I want to see you. Cool. I'm going to be reading some poems from a working manuscript called Bitter Fruit. Ooh, let's take a little shake. All right, cool. Bitter Fruit is in the best way my love poem to Black people, to memory, and to myself. And it has started off as a grand project in the American project, the American idea. And yeah, let me just get to the poems. The day. I'm struggling to write this poem, any poem. And the day feels lost to me. What of the bird? Its fluid allegiance to color. What of the child bearing their throat to the clouds and making a song? What of the accidental handhold? Two people walking so close, they forget their borders. And for a moment, something was entertained. Oh, the possibility of it all. What of the pine needles splayed across the road? Dutiful soldiers, an ocean of green retaking pavement. What of the begging ego that walks past the border and into the real world? A counterfeit, a mask. I forget to take off for 20 something years. What of regret? Burying the country of my gratitude. I reach a death not out of strength, but desperation. What of the poem that will cure the world of its pains? How will the world react once they see my nude splendor? What of the relationship what of the sin in my family tree? What of the poem that will cut the atom, fix my father, heal my mother? You have been talking to my ego this entire time. I'm sorry. But what you heard was not me. But if you could do me a favor, what did they say? Poems are hard for me, yo. It could be trauma. It could be, trauma, or it could be trauma. I don't know. So one of the things that's been really difficult for me for this in this pandemic is this idea of any kind of proximity to people. And I'm high risk. I have loved ones that are high risk. And the interesting thing that has been very hard for me, especially in this time, is I can't be close to the people that I want to right now because they are they're not in the best space. And it takes me time to figure out how can I get to the space of being close again, not only to my work, to other people. And this is a poem I wrote a long time about last year, thinking about why I ain't been writing poems. So here, why I ain't been writing poems, an outline. After Diane Seuss, Eden, an outline. 1, there's a bullet gnawing in the back of my forehead. A, the bullet is figurative. The bullet is a bullet. B, you could pull the trigger somewhere. I'm just playing the odds at this point, 50-50. 2, therapy is opening me up. A, I'm not sure if I want to open up anymore. 3, this raspberry sorbet. A, it reminds me of whiskey. A bitter thing swirled in the mouth long enough can become sweet, like blood. It's blood. 4, my grandma has Alzheimer's. A, I'm a forgetful thing. I wonder if it's hereditary. One time, I didn't know it was my birthday. I didn't know it was my birthday. There goes that gnawing again. 5, my house is a mess. A, it isn't my fault. I'm a mess. It isn't my fault. It is my fault. Fuck therapy. I'm tired of making lists. Why am I doing this again? 6, there's a bullet gnawing the back of my forehead. 7, I don't know if my grandma is gonna remember my face. A, recently, she held my cheek like a fresh peach, kissed it tender, said she loved me. It ruined me. So why I ain't been writing poems lately? Like I was saying, Bitter Fruit is a project talking about America's memory, a place and time that I want you to take in consideration. Google it after this. August 7th, 1930, Marion, Indiana. That's all I'm giving you. This poem is a contrapuntal. It's one of my favorite poems to read to people. It's called Three-Part Harmony. 1, Thomas Ship. Tonight, the sky dies a swell and split kind of death. Heaven be a crowded tenement building, holding a flood back, crushing against the safest block, washing away the tallest of gates. Tonight, I will swing by the crook of my neck. Above land that will not cover me, will become a dead thing, fixed in the air. I will be a star. My mama will salt the earth with a sea of herself. The body of the crowd boils, which turns into a mist, lost in the starlit sky. One day will come crashing down to Abram Smith. Yet I'm looking for my teeth, which makes me forgetful or just unlucky, drowning while everyone watches. I try and escape and may break my wings, lost in the leash of my own undoing, and on to safety, like my savior, a beacon summoning a lost love, burning hate from my bones, filling the sky a new black. Where can I go now that I have lost my wings? 3, James Cameron. Yet I still have my tongue, a fair trade, I suppose. I'm the prayer forever, praising mercy, fortissimo, blood withheld. I was told hope is an angel living in like a new Eden, an inclusive heaven where my brothers wish to hold me. If you are not familiar with a contrapuntal, I have just read 3 columns. I am now going to read across the columns in its own separate poem. 3-part harmony. 1, Thomas Ship. 2, Abram Smith. 3, James Cameron. Tonight, the sky dies, yet I am looking for my teeth, yet I still have my tongue. A swell and split kind of death, which makes me forgetful, a fair trade. Heaven be a crowded tenement building or just unlucky. I suppose holding a flood back, drowning while everyone watches. I'm crashing against the safest block. I try and escape the prayer, washing away the tallest of gates, and they break my wings forever. Tonight, I will swing, lost in the leash of praising mercy. By the crook of my neck, my own undoing, fortissimo, above land and on to blood. That will not cover me, safety withheld, will become a dead thing fixed in the air like my savior. I was told I will be a star, a beacon of hope. Is my mama will salt the earth, summoning an angel with the sea of herself, a lost love living in the body of the crowd boils, burning from hate from my bones like a new Eden, which turns into mist, filling the sky a new black. An inclusive heaven, lost in the starlit sky. Where can I go? Where my brothers wish one day will come crashing down now that I have lost my wings to hold me. I love that poem, and I hope you like it. Do I have time for one more poem? One more poem, okay. What we gonna do? What we gonna do? Fuck it. Let's end off tender. Thank you so much, Art Lit Lab. Thank you to my fellow readers, and thank you for everyone who is just watching this in whatever time or space that you're in. I love you. Thank you. Ode to my Black boys on the S train. Yes, I am from East New York. This nigga can't even fight. That's why he carrying that little ass gun. You mustard greens and hot water cornbread, bammy and saltfish, griot and pickles, jollof and palm wine. You speak reckless because you've been held that way. Your body is the sum of all odds and stay winning and losing. Ew, Josie got the fat ass. Buns be looking nice. I be busting them shits for days. Josie got a nice body. You, nature poem, stripped of the trees. Never seen a flower that ain't been plucked, a garden of skelly and blunt wraps. You hard tongue and soft eyes, soft boy in a hard world. You said you would bust her shit because her body nice. You corrected your mans. Josie got that ill body. Nah, Josie body is nice. Can't strip the tender from your tongue, but you try. Thank you.
I had to turn my camera off. I was about to lose it. Give it up one more time for Nicholas Nichols. Ah, goodness gracious. And finally, last but not least, Lauren Russell. I had the great pleasure of having Lauren come to, I knew about Lauren for a long time. I had been introduced to her work, but I got to interact with her for the very first time when she came to my last graduate poetry workshop. And after that, I was like, I don't know how, but I got to get her on one of these readings. And so, Christmas came early and she agreed to come and read poems to all of us. And we are so blessed for it. Lauren Russell is the author of Descent with Tarpaulin Sky Press 2020 and What's Hanging on the Hush, Ashanta Press 2017. She has received fellowships from the National Endowment of the Arts, Cave Canem, Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and her work has appeared in various publications, including the New York Times Magazine and the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day. She was an assistant director at the Center of African American Poetry and Poetics at the University of Pittsburgh from 2016 to 2020. In the fall of 2020, she joined the faculty of Michigan State University as an assistant professor in the Residential College in the Arts and Humanities and director of the RCAH Center for Poetry. It is my pleasure to introduce to you all Lauren Russell.
Thank you, Atiola. Wow, I'm just like in awe of everyone who just read. Thank you for curating this amazing reading. I can't wait for the conversation. And it's also nice to be virtually at the Arts and Lit Lab. I lived in Madison when it started. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to read one newer poem, which is to say it's the one poem I completed in the year 2020. And then I'll read from my most recent book, Descent. And it's referencing this painting by Magritte, which I think is our second Magritte reference this evening. It's referencing this painting called The Listening Room. That's basically, there's a giant apple and there's nothing else in the canvas. First dispatch from the listening room. Why do you want to be less than a sentence? You say to one lone amoeba who quakes under the scrutiny of 5,000 unyielding microscopes of uncertainty. In the time of the virus, you begin to catalog all your griefs and their subordinate scabs. Love collapsed and dead cat, and also months of inhaling only your own exhalations. Or do you mean exhumations, say the wary green eyes of newfound cats? Your labels refuse to join with verbs. Your fragments want to remain inactive. When your glasses fog up on your evening walk, 2 hours before they abruptly split down the bridge and break apart, you tear your face mask off and smell for the first time in how long charred flesh or exorcisms roasting on a backyard spit that just keeps spinning. The sky darkens, aflutter with winged dinosaurs of anxiety. Pterodactyls, I can't pronounce this right, pteranodons. Pterodactyls, pteranodons, passenger pigeons, moping geese. You think they are flying away from the jars, but the sky itself is bottling them. In this time of virus, sentences coagulate into knots. Predicates are freight elevators for hauling griefs. This one's full of that enormous apple of Magritte's. You'll be riding into the future progressive with too much rot and nowhere to breathe. And next I'm going to read from my book Descent, which came out in June of 2020. The backstory is that in 2013, I acquired a copy of the diary of my great-great-grandfather, Robert Wallace Hubbard. He was a captain in Hood's Texas Brigade in the Civil War. And after the end of the war, went back to East Texas and had children by 3 of his former slaves who were also half sisters. And one of them was my great-great-grandmother, Peggy Hubbard. And as I was typing these 220 pages of diary entries, I became really interested in everything he was leaving out, and spent years doing research and writing into that space. And a lot of that was during my time in Madison. So there's actually a lot of Madison in this book. Dear Robert, dear Redbeard, dear specter of the great white father, dear slaveholder, dear Confederate captain captured at Gettysburg, dear dispenser of land favors, seaman, procreator of 20 children by 3 sisters simultaneously, dear father of the Negro League pitcher, dear farmer, schoolmaster, landlord, hired hand, grave paler, log roller, surveyor, and manure shoveler, dear singer, dear churchman and circus fan, dear reveler at brigade reunions, dear collector of sentimental poems about loneliness and redemption, dear pointy-eared like Lucifer and bearded beyond Rasputin, dear mythical Jim Crow defier, hero of my grandfather's childhood, who took him on the whites only section of the streetcar. He claimed this really happened, proclaiming, "These are my grandchildren and they're sitting with me." Dear diarist, dear widower, dear lonesome hunger, dear admirer of well-formed women, dear inscrutable in the tintype beside your favorite half-claimed child, dear tallier of payments, debts, work days, weather conditions, neighbors by name and race, dear borer of wells, dear master of omission. Heard a whippoorwill holler this morning for the first time this spring. Heard a whippoorwill holler, all hands choking cotton. Heard a holler, a whimper. Heard a will whip her. Will heard a whip. Whip or will heard, herding hers, whipping herds, sowing oats, whipping whores, stripping cane ore. Whelped her, willed her a well and a hold, dank of the dark of the hell of the hold. Choking cotton, caught in, a yoke and a pull, stripped and caned for. Heard her holler, caught her, held her hand to the, whipped out your, held her head to the, whipped out the billfold. Heard a whimper this spring, choked door. Heard a holler, a hollowed out hold, whipped to a wheelbarrow, hell bent toward a hole, ripped from a, wrapped in a gut wrench sugar hold. Question. So how did the women feel about this? Answer. Don't guess they had no say. As I said, my great-great-grandmother's name was Peggy. Peggy rises out of sleep through the dream called blue, where all her kinfolks are wading through fields of blue. Even her father left in Georgia, her stillborn brother somehow grown, her niece who stumbled into the fire on Christmas Day and died with the vision of her white dress aflame. The aunt or uncle who ran off or was lost forever to the auction block. They are all wearing blue, blue hats, blue shawls, and in the way they sing a song with no words deep from the gut, there is also blue. And bluely she creeps toward them in her calico blue, and now there is a dance. They are partnering for the quadrille, and the man they called Bo Peep cradles a banjo, strikes a tune, blue. And her petticoats starched with hominy water and Pris's too. And every time they stop moving for a second, the petticoats pop and Pris giggles, and in Pris's eyes are flecks of blue. The log train shakes her into waking, black then dark blue. And she reaches for her kerchief blue, and she is stumbling toward the cradle blue and cooing shoo shoo to the baby who is hollering now. One Sunday, the preacher prayed, Lord, let us all go to heaven where there'll be no log train. Hoo, 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 and a clankety clank, whoos, black smoke curling into the half blue. Bob, can I be your lazy eye, your wander lust, your grave without a headstone, your bleeding gums, your buck teeth, and your walk bow-legged at the knee? Can I be your fortune hunter, your glimpse of wild geese, your red russet shoes that poison the feet? Reckon this as the best of my seed, been stripping cane and blind, robbing the bees. Reckon you've thought of swimming the creek. Last night they came on horseback, white hoods like phantoms, scanning the trees, burning torches, shattering sleep. I dragged the shotgun from the door and stepped, squinting, onto the porch. And this is when I wrote at Cave Canem. I can't remember which year it was, if Nicholas was in my group or not, but it's one of those. I want to think that when the witness tree leaned into the ledge, it heard her heart stop between one breath and the next. The day they buried Peggy, all the trees were whispering, the chinkapins and loblolly pines. Did she miscarry, bleed to death, while Bob or Plunk saddled the horse, rode miles panting after the doctor in town? Did she recall her mother's 20 pregnancies and bite her lips, her tongue the quilt, and finally the bedpost, lest her daughters hear her scream and come too close? Did she rage deliriously through the shakes, bloat from dropsy or hack through a consumptive fit? Or did she take her own life, swallow strychnine or arsenic, hang herself from a beam, clench a shotgun between her teeth? Peggy sometimes spoke in whispers. Sometimes she did not speak at all, but just said, uh-huh, leaning hard on the last syllable, or sure did, with all her weight on the first. Sometimes, if Bob looked closely, he would see a thought blow across her face. Once he might have tried to squeeze it out, but a woman is not sugar cane you can run through a mill, its secrets easily expelled. Peggy, today I plucked a whippoorwill from down the bottom of the well. Her neck was broke, but still she hollered out her name. Get. The burst of freedom came in June. Go yonder way, I said. Once, when she was 16, Peggy finished cooking the hominy and drew pictures with ashes left on the hearth. When the Genographic Project says I am more Scandinavian than African, I don't know how to feel about it. If I went to Denmark in this skin, this smoking cyclone crown of frizz, and declared the findings, who would they convince? I'm told I am more Scandinavian than African and wonder where this belongs in the half-built book I am no longer living in. Bob Hubbard was always gathering moss for the mudcat chimneys he raised over Polk County. A county surveyor knew where lines bent. Did he leave behind a genetic map? Bob came through and made everybody kin, one of my cousins laughs. From Emma Haynes' History of Polk County, 1937. When the camp was established at Moscow, every house was closed and Negroes paraded up and down the streets. The next morning, 4 Negroes were found hanging to a tree. The Ku Klux Klan would control the Negroes and did to a great extent, but the citizens were kept in constant fear of a Negro uprising. Oh, that people loved peace rather than war. In the book I built, where I no longer live, some nights hummings in the walls, not wind hissing through chinks, but a human song that shifts in sleep and dips into a low diphthong. Peggy, that moon ain't hiding, clouds a shawl, moon's cold as brass tacked upside a night's frock. Pin your tears to her, they'll sing like chimes, or ghosts that cry. Sometimes I feel I'm almost gone. Ghosts charred in dead men's lust. Think I'm some fool, got brains of shucks? Since freedom I've been through the toughs. See, one moon casts your shadow twice, once toward the bottom land, once toward the pines. The wind's right smart, but moon, she's sly. Look, lightning bugs, they spark, but they cannot catch fire. Thank you.
Wow. Whew. What an evening, y'all. That was incredible. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, one more time, let's give it up for ourselves. People, if you're sitting at home, give it up for each other. This is amazing. We're going to now go into the Q&A. I wanted to begin. Well, actually, let's just like take a quick like breather because that was really intense. I just whew, this was really gorgeous. Thank you all so much for this fantastic reading. This was amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, Aya Kunle, I wanna begin the Q&A, and I want to begin with you. Your work has a remarkable way of protecting hope amidst a world drowning in destruction. How do you protect joy in your own life and in your writing as a Black man, but also as someone who is acutely aware of death, and however present it may be?
Wow. That's how we're gonna start.
Yeah, yep, it's like that. Actually, it is.
Damn. Okay. Oh wow. Well, thank you first to like all the readers. Like I'm so honored to be reading with you all. Um, wow. And thank you for that question. Like I feel seen by it too. Um, I think it's like those two things, right? My parents decided to name me Joy. First of all, like my name Ayo means joy, and if we're looking at the full name Ayo Kunle, it means joy fills the house. So ever since I was aware of my name, I've been aware of like the weight of joy, right? Uh, but also the weight, of death, which is like real. And those two things are kind of just like kind of bucking against each other, right? Um, and a way to protect that is, things like this. Like poetry gives me so much joy to know that at least for the main time that we are here, we have language, right? To be able to kind of like build whatever we have to build for ourselves before we have to go. And sometimes those things remain far, 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 far longer than we do. So that that's something. It's not a lot, but it's something that at least something stays even while I'm no longer here. And yeah, there's a lot of joy in that, I think. Even with that constant reminder that, yeah, our time is kind of like ticking. So yeah.
Thank you for that. I have another question for you, but I'm gonna come back, give you a breather. Brittany, I ain't got no kids, but I'm always deeply excited and invested in work that negotiates the maternal. Uh, that negotiates the maternal, that negotiates this sort of not secretive, but there's a way in which society as a whole, even though we're getting better marginally, that we still kind of treat motherhood as this thing that has to be negotiated behind closed doors, right? Um, Even something as innocuous as breastfeeding, everybody got to eat, but like when women breastfeed in public, it becomes a whole fiasco when it shouldn't be. Like that baby's crying, that baby is hungry, leave that mama alone, they got to do their thing. I'm invested in how your work refuses to flinch away from how brutal pregnancy is. You talk about blood, you talk about very visceral and tangible things about pregnancy, and I appreciate the fact that you don't look away from those things. And I just appreciate how you're very honest about how transformative pregnancy is on the body, especially as it relates to the Black feminine form. Your work also carries generations of women in your writing. I'm curious about who else your work is in conversation with or speaking to that may not be immediately obvious on the surface.
Will you asking them big questions today? Big questions. I think so. First off, thank you for that framing. I think people don't talk about motherhood because there are some spaces of it that hurt in a way that I don't think makes for like polite conversation. Something that I notice is that if I'm talking about motherhood and I'm saying something like less than complimentary, sometimes people will be like, like, how can you talk about it like that? I'm like, oh, that's what's true. And I don't know why that's difficult for folks to grapple with. I think my work consistently is in conversation with my immediate mothers, my mama, my granny, my great granny, because my family is a matriarchy. It's a lot of divorced women, so it's just us in a lot of ways. So all of my direction and teaching and understanding comes immediately from them. And I think motherhood was something they were always very silent about, but that I saw practice so thoroughly that I feel like I received like full instructions on it, if that makes sense. And I'm always pushing to be a more honest mother because there were so many questions that I had that I feel like didn't get answered until I was a mother, or even so many things about my mothers that I didn't understand or didn't empathize with. Becoming a mother gave me a lot of empathy for them in a way that I didn't have that empathy before. Because it helped me see them as people. Like, I think I woke up one day and was like, you mean to tell me my mama like had 4 kids and went to school and like, had heartbreak and all of this stuff going on, and then we didn't take out food for dinner? Like, oh my God. So it's things that I feel like now I understand that I didn't understand before. In terms of writing, some folks who I feel like my work might be in conversation with, Nicole Homer is a person who I bring into every space with me. Her work on motherhood absolutely opens my heart every single time, and just love
Nicole.
I love Nicole for how honest her work on motherhood is, and how much it always like pushes me to be the most transparent version of myself. I think about Asha Bandelli. I always remember the title of the first book, but the second I think was specifically about her daughter Nisa in a way that was like very transformative for me. And of course, Mother Toni Morrison, beloved. I read every year, and every year see something new. Every year cry anew. And I remember the first time I read it was before I had kids, and just thinking about like, oh my God, what a brutal choice. But reading it post children, and with each child that gets added, I'm like, oh, this is a whole different. I feel this on a much more visceral level. And that book always reminds me of the very small decisions and sacrifices that mothers have to make every day. And the choices that I think would feel brutal to some folks that are like, okay, this is just what comes with the territory.
Whew. Listen, you speaking the gospel truth. Also, shout out to Nicole Homer. She be out here writing poems.
Writing. My God.
Thank you for that. Nicholas and Lauren, this is a joint question for the both of you. I was very particular about having the both of you read together because while you both write in different styles, there's a lot of overlap between your work. I'm particularly grateful to have you both in conversation for that reason. In the ways that both of your work confronts the cruelest truths in history, you make it more approachable, even closer to the now. There's a way in which that both of your works recognize the fact that we may be a generation or so removed, but it is still affecting us now, and the same brutalized racial violences are still happening now. Nicholas, in your work, you talk about a very specific hideous lynching that happened. And Lauren, you talk about violences that are inextricably tied to your family, which allows us to see how violence in that way is both intimate and historical. I'm thinking about what Dinesh said, history is what it is, it knows what it did. How do you both reconcile with history in your work in a way that brings you both peace? There's a lot of like research and negotiating and navigating you both do, but I'm also curious about what you both do to kind of replenish yourself and take care of yourself after that sort of really hard and difficult work. Um, yeah, let's just kind of begin there. How do you both confront these violences of history, and then how do you both protect yourselves and make peace a priority in your respective lives?
Waiting for the other person to talk. By the way, now I forgot the name of the poem. Did I write it down? No, I didn't. The Contrapuntal, the 3-part, the lynching, the 1930s lynching poem.
Oh, 3-part harmony. Yeah.
3-part harmony, yeah. That blew me away. The picture is in Claudia Rankine's Citizen. And I was teaching it, and one of my students had looked it up, and so I had read the history recently. But anyway, I'm interested to hear what you're going to say. I don't know if I have the answer to the question about finding peace. I don't think that.
I was dying when she said I was literally Soldier Boy. Peace.
I don't know her. Where's she at? I'm trying to find her.
Yeah, I don't know. In a way, I was relieved to finish the book because I found it really hard to live with it. I don't find it peaceful. I found it quite fraught and quite troubling, and would usually try to work on it in sort of big spaces, like go to a writing residency and work on it, or just sort of like reserve like emotional time and space to do that work. I wrote a lot of them at Cave Canem retreats also, which was a great place to be in conversation with other Black poets around that, like even in around that kind of work. But I don't know that it did bring peace. I think it brought a different way of thinking about my family. Actually, it sort of ties into what Brittany said. I didn't read the section I wrote about my grandparents, but I think that sort of coming to understand more of my family's history, I came to appreciate them more and to sort of, and understanding what my grandparents went through, it just sort of shed this whole other light on my relationship with them and my relationship with my dad and sort of like generations of my family that I just sort of came to understand and appreciate them more. And I wish that my grandparents were still alive so I could have that conversation with them. But that's the thing it did for me. Nicholas, what were you going to say?
I know Etiola made this a joint question because she made it a single question. I was going to say, I plead the fifth. Nice one, best friend. Smart. Dang. Peace. It don't bring me peace. I was having visceral nightmares. I still have like visceral nightmares when I'm actually in the book. So the manuscript started out as a challenge to myself. I was like, I want to write something courageous. And very much like my emotional growth as a youngin', I thought the courageous thing was masking my pain through the shared pain of being Black. I'm not depressive. I'm not like insecure about gender or sexuality. No, no, no. I'm a Black person in America, and this is where all my troubles are. A lot of them come from there, not gonna lie, but it's not all of them. And I truly and honestly looked at that lynching. So if you haven't yet seen the photo, it is a lynching in Marion, Indiana, August 7th, 1930. And they had lynched two young Black boys in the middle of town. And if you look at the photo, it looks like a picnic because that's America's history. The murder of Black people was a gathering. It was a get together. It was a hoonin. How do I know this? PBS had done a great interview of the people who were actually there at Marion, Indiana, when the lynching happened. And one of the participants, and even if you are a voyeur, even if you are just a witness, you are a participant. A participant in this lynching, she was on her way from school. And some good old boys came up in the truck and said, "Hey, hanging some niggers. You want to come?" And it's like, "Y'all ain't doing that." Like it was a little bit too extravagant. Like, no, y'all doing that. Something so fun. So I wouldn't say peace. I am very disturbed at all times. Anytime I think about America's history, I am also greatly disturbed by how whimsical our death has become in popular media, how consumable it is. I just recently watched Judas and the Black Messiah, and I was depressed the next day because I was literally thinking about the ways in which white supremacy has been used as such a fantastic tool in disrupting Black liberation in this country, from the body to the politic to the culture and to the spirit. And I was just thinking about, I just want my niggas to be happy. I want them to, if shoes is their thing, I want them to get shoes. If drinking some good bottle of whiskey is good, do that. Smoke a J, that. Praying and not committing haram, great, whatever. But it's infuriating thinking about the work that I'm so impacted by this cultural stigma that I had no parts in creating. And I have been in so many ways been tricked into supporting by virtue of patriarchy, by virtue of fat phobia, by virtue of transphobia, by virtue of queer phobia. By hating another person and sustaining that hate, I have sustained every other system that has gone out its way to control me in every aspect of my life. So writing the work is more so, I need everybody to be frustrated with me. If I'm gonna have a bad day, if I'm not gonna sleep, y'all ain't gonna, like, know your history when I say that. I don't want anybody else sleeping better than me now, because I have to live with the work. So y'all gonna have to live with the work, but it's gonna have a little bit of medicine in it by the fact that we're talking about it. I'll say that's peaceful. When I get to have conversations like this in group, and have discourse with like-minded writers and unlike-minded authors, and being able to talk about this specific point of history and then expand upon that, how it's affected my grandfather, my mother, and me, and will affect the people that come after me.
That's a good answer. I'm glad that I had the foresight to ask you both at the same time.
I got you.
I have another question, but Kunle, you said you had questions for the other readers here?
Yeah, I guess it's more of a curiosity. Like reading through y'all's work, just kind of fascinated by like how form is like working in y'all's work. And I know you did say something about the project you were talking about, Nicholas, how repetition functions, and also kind of like tied to history, right? How everything that happened in the past is still kind of like happening. The sense of like the past is never dead. And Lauren, you use a lot of repetition in your work as well, like the sounds just like stacking on top of each other, and actually like coming back to phrases and stuff like that. And also Brittany, the pantoum especially is what I'm thinking about, and how that is kind of like repeating form too. So basically curious about form in general, but also kind of if you can speak more directly to like what repetition does for you in your work.
You use a lot of repetition too. You don't want to answer the question yourself?
No, I do, which is why I'm like, very, very curious about it, because it's like, oh wow, shit, it's y'all that just like put us all together. Like how brilliant, but also kind of like, yeah, please.
I feel like you should be compelled to answer your own question, but as well. And
I was a coward last time. I'll let you go first. So I'm gonna go first. I'll say, so the way that form has helped sustain me is it's really hard for me to begin a poem a lot of times unless I have like a truly like visceral feeling in the moment. Like I just dropped a slice of cheesecake, or dang it, I have to take somebody's shift on a day I had things planned. So form has allotted me the space of the gift of constraint that I now have to think of something that can slap within these made up constraints of either the form that I'm of a given form or a form that I create myself. And the thing that I enjoy about repetition, and I'm really excited to hear from the rest of y'all, is that not only is that soundscape effect happens where I'm thinking about the reader reading the poem aloud and I want to create some kind of haunting, but also it allows for me to really sit with the words and let the person sit with the words and allow that a sentence can be read in a many pattern. A sentence can have a many subtext, and you can either utilize a form like a Pantone where it's built in, like, so insanely neat, where it creates that repetition for the reader, or you can force them by having the words read again and again, and maybe even stacked up against other words, or even broken up by caesura or redaction. So that's something that I think form has done for my work.
I can talk. I love form. So I think it's also just sort of how I manage to write without, like, students are, a lot of people think you need to be inspired, and like, I'm not inspired. I just have forms, I have constraints, and therefore I'm able to do something. Repetition specifically, I was introducing Yona Harvey, who, if you don't know your work, if anybody doesn't know her work, they should, because she's amazing. But she uses a lot of repetition. And in the process of writing this intro, I started thinking about it differently. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, pretty severe, and it's really been exacerbated by the pandemic. And one of there's various interventions I've been taught, but one of them is actually, like, whatever I am anxious about, to record that in as much detail as possible, like the worst case scenario, and then play it on a loop over and over until my mind gets exhausted. And doesn't always work. Sometimes it works. But there's this suggestion that through repetition, there's like the possibility of transformation. And I've sort of started thinking about that also in terms of my practice as a poet, and like, how is repetition creating the conditions for transformation? But beyond that, in this book, Peggy always speaks in iambic pentameter, which is a very particular formal choice, which I just happened upon because I was auditing a forms class and we had an assignment to write in iambic pentameter. And I discovered that that was a really great constraint for that particular voice, because she is constrained, because her life is constrained. But it also created this really interesting idiosyncratic voice. So I think sometimes form like creates these opportunities for us, even though it seems like it's limiting. It's actually opening up lots of space.
Wow.
All right, I had to get to the unmute button. So I would not say that I love form. That might be still a bit strong for me. I will say that I think form for a long time felt very much like this strange puzzle that I was just like, I don't know why this thing doesn't fit. But also along the line, I think I began to view forms to deal with repetition remind me a lot of music, and music is my first love. Rap specifically is like my first love. So that is, I think, the link that pleases me most is like knowing and assessing that this word is gonna keep coming up, or like I have golden shovels where like I might take a little Kim line or a Trina line, and that's my golden shovel because that is like the language that is most familiar to me, and it reminds me of that musicality. And truly, don't nobody do a metaphor like Trina. So that's where my fondness, if we could say I have a fondness for form, that is where my fondness comes from. I do think it resurfaces in my work because it brings up like that less formal in some ways sense of like, this is the structure, this is how I'm guiding you. This is like the cyclical nature of my work and of my obsessions. And this is what is like a repeating theme or a repeating function of my life, a foundation to me. And I think that repeating foundation is really important to me in my work. Like, I think it's important to me that I feel like people read a poem and they know what my interests and obsessions are. And so it's gonna come up again. Like, you're gonna see it because that for me is like what shapes me.
Answer your own question.
Well, I didn't ask the question to like answer it, but I don't know. I've been thinking while y'all are talking. Y'all are so brilliant. Um, but I mean, form for me, just in general, is so that I can have something to kind of like buck against. Like I need that. I need something to resist. I need something to fight against. Like I've always kind of said this. I never, ever, ever in my life want to write a perfect sonnet. I have no interest in that. But I'll write a sonnet-ish poem. I'm very, very into that. I never want to write a perfect pantoum, right? But I'll write a poem that looks like a pantoum. It might be a pantoum, right? Stuff like that. Like I just need something to be able to be like, okay, well, it is 14 lines. It is all in iambic pentameter. Some parts rhyme. Is it a sonnet? Is it not? I don't know. It is sonnet-ish, right? I like stuff like that because it kind of allows me the chance to also kind of like play around, not so much follow the rules, but like know that they're there because like they're helpful. Um, and as far as repetition, I think I relate a lot to like a lot of like what you all have said, but especially what Brittany said about obsessions, but also what Lauren said too about I'm a very forgetful person, so sometimes like stuff shows up that I'm like, oh shit, uh, I said that before, but like now I'm saying it again, but in a different way. And I feel like I learn a lot about myself to kind of like in that process, like, oh, you're obsessed about these same things, or like you said these words like 5 times. What's up with that, right? And sometimes, in the process of like editing, you take that out, or sometimes you leave it in there. But I also love the relationship between like words, like sonically, right? Like how two, 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 I can say that, and those are like three different words, right? And that kind of allows me to, again, kind of like explore, uh, like try to find the limit to whatever language can be, and then find out that, oh, it is limitless. So yeah, I don't know. Those are a lot of words.
We're
Thank
getting
you.
close to time, but thank you all, everyone. That was really amazing. Does anyone else have questions for everybody else? Um, yeah, sure, Nick, go on ahead.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all so smart. Um, a thing that I wanted to ask, and I was talking about it in between poems, was, how are you doing? Like, truly and honestly, on some real, how are you doing? How have you been noticing um what the fuckery of this whole pandemic and lack of response across the world, how has that been affecting your perception, if it has or has not? In which ways have you had to like reassure yourself and reinforce yourself to be able to do the work? And I'll answer right now, I haven't been doing that work. Like, I haven't did not write a poem 2020. I was editing poems. I was editing my own poems, but I had to like really safely refocus a lot of my energy creatively back into editing, back into editing other people's work at the journals that I work for, and separately and privately. I just put myself into other people's work. And I don't know, and I never thought, with all the research that I do into white supremacy in America and in the world, that I would trust people less now since the pandemic has started. So I just want to hear, one, how are you doing? And then two, how are you getting through, and what changes have you noticed about yourself? Thank you.
I'm just gonna hop in because I really hard co-sign with that. I've never trusted people less before, and I didn't think that was possible. I'm like, y'all have really shocked me. I think there are ways where I thought that like white supremacy would always try to protect itself, and I'm like, huh, not even for y'all own folks, huh? That's wild. And then especially like living in Detroit, I'm a high school teacher by trade. I remember the day that we got like shut down. We went from 2 cases to thousands to like our mortality rate was like 10% at one point in Detroit. And it was obviously a wreck and very tragic and a lot of like stress, right? And so to watch folks in like neighboring cities be like, oh, that's Detroit. And we were like, oh, bet, okay. To like trying to kidnap a governor, just a lot of things have happened in this space that I'm like, my trust level is at 0. How I'm ever gonna leave my house, I really don't know. In terms of writing, I'm at Randolph's MFA right now, and I've produced writing for classwork. I can't say that I've done a lot of personal writing, to be honest. I really try to buoy myself like in my kids. And, you know, in the folks I consider community, there have been lots of FaceTime calls, whether we want to talk on FaceTime or not. There's been lots of like, you know, calls where we just sit and stare at each other, and we've had to make ourselves okay with that. And really trying to reconcile with myself that like, okay, this is where we are, and it's just not well. Because I think honesty for me is like the best form of love. And if I've just been trying to remain honest throughout this process, maybe one day, you know, things will feel like they're in a better, more peaceful space. I feel like y'all like, what is peace? Who knows? But I feel at the very least like grounded in what's happening. Like, okay, I know there are people I cannot trust. I see what is happening in the world, and I am tethered to my family and my folks. And that's all I can, that's what I got.
Yeah, I would say like having a handful of people close by as being like helpful. I'm also not doing like great, but I'm also like in the MFA program, so that's allowed me to kind of like focus on just poems. But I've also kind of written a lot this past year. Writing for me, and also, you know, outside of the pandemic, there's a whole a lot more that's like happening in my personal life that I need kind of to like sort out. And so writing is kind of being like a space for me to do that. And like I'm thankful, like super grateful that I have like that avenue to just kind of like, you know, to sort out everything that I need to sort out, either through poems or essays, or sometimes it's just like, I was reading through some stuff earlier today, and I was like, what the fuck are you trying to say? but but it was helpful for that time, you know, whatever version of me who wrote, those like fragments that would never amount to anything, was like, grateful for it, I'm sure. But yeah, it's been a mess, to say the least. But I think, yeah, I think writing has been kind of like, how people say writing saved me, or like poetry saved me. This past year has kind of been like the first time that felt true and real to me. Like, oh, I can have something to like to do every day, that actually truly like gives me life. Yeah.
Um, I haven't been able to write much at all. Like I said, that was the one poem. The poem I read at the beginning was the only poem I completed in 2020. Similarly, I had a lot of drafts. Like I just sort of like I've been, written notes and things, but finishing them seems really challenging. I find it really hard. I think for me, like writing poetry particularly requires being in a headspace of being able to like focus on the moment and like sort of like be very intensely in the moment, and when I start to do that, I just sort of start to crumble. So it's it's really like I can't be in the moment, or it's like it's impossible to survive. So it makes it really challenging. And I also relocated and started a new job in the middle of the pandemic, which adds this whole other element of stress and busyness. And I live alone with 2 cats, so I haven't had a hug in a year, and like all of that. Even Ayakunle, I think it was the first poem you read, there was like a lot of touch in it, and even the way I hear touch is totally different from like not having touch for so long, and I wonder how that's gonna change my writing. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
I think this will be my last question for the evening, unless anyone else had anything to ask people. Ayakunle, you and I both have a very complicated relationship to Nigeria and America. I did think you knew this question was eventually going to come. We both have a complicated relationship to our.
No, I was hoping you would not, to be honest.
Like, please don't do this to me right now.
But
yeah, we both have a complicated. I had to take both the flags out of my bio. That's how upset I am right now. It's like I can't do this with both my countries. The Lake Etoll massacre happened, the insurrection happened. I'm just like, wow, everything is garbage. I can't claim any of these. I can't claim any of my countries anymore. It's how bad it's gotten. I'm curious about how you're reconciling with that, both in your work and in your life, if you can even do the latter or even the former.
yeah, at this point, to be honest, kind of like how Nicholas said, like, what's peace? I'm like, what the fuck is reconciliation? But it's something that I'm like definitely kind of wrestling with, and it's complicated because and my thesis right now is actually like on that, and to even extend that further, it's like to be born is such a, to be born first is like nobody asked for it, right? To be born Nigerian, nobody asked for it. To be born American, like nobody asked for that.
Sure.
And yet here we are. So in the same way that I had to reckon with being alive and being a human being, right? I have to reckon with what it means to be quote unquote Nigerian when Nigeria is also an invention, right? Thinking about the fact that like when my grandfather was born, Nigeria was not, it did not exist, right? And Nigeria did not exist until somebody named it Nigeria, right? So with the history of any country. And so I don't know that I'm like really interested so much in the business of like belonging to a country anymore. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of like, yeah, like I had no choice in that matter. And so I mean, I can make a choice to kind of, not totally like divorcing myself from it, because you can't, right? From either being Nigerian or American or whatever, but you still kind of just in the same way that my relationship with form in general, it's like, okay, we're inside this box, right? Can I kind of like punch a hole inside the box to see outside for a little bit, right? And yeah, that's kind of, but ultimately still in a box, right? And so my job is gonna be inside the box. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's real. I think that's where I'm about too with both sides of the ocean. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much, everyone at home, for tuning in. Please follow Art Lit Lab on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Art Lit Lab. If you like this programming that you heard tonight, please consider making a donation to artlitlab.org. Support us/donate. Your generous contributions allows us to keep programming like this accessible and free to the public. Please consider purchasing the books of our readers. Thank you so much and have a good night.